I'd never imagined that if a woman suggested I film in bed, it would end up like this. I know, bad joke. I apologise, I'm not really thinking straight. I haven't been sleeping well. And not for the reasons I'd hoped. Sorry. I guess I should start at the beginning. My mother was not exactly the most maternal woman, and not exactly the nicest person to be around. She had lots of problems, and one of those was night terrors. Every night like clockwork, she'd just start screaming for hours at the top of her lungs, screaming. And I had to listen to it. I couldn't sleep. I tried everything I could think of to block out the sound. I tried holding my pillows over my head. I tried burying myself in the covers at the bottom of the bed. It got so bad I ended up hiding in my wardrobe and trying to sleep in there. It didn't help. I could still hear her. I don't understand why our neighbours never said anything or did anything. They must have heard her. I have no idea whether or not she knew she was doing it. There were obvious consequences, like the constant sore throat, but then she was a heavy smoker, so I don't know. I never told her in any case. I didn't dare. But as you can imagine, it had a serious impact on my life. Because I didn't get any sleep at night, I'd be exhausted during the day. I became sullen and withdrawn, angry. I fell asleep at school more than once. The other kids would take the piss out of me for it. They nicknamed me Mr. Go-to-Bed after a character in some children's books. One day I remember drifting off in class. I woke up and noticed some of the other kids watching me, giggling. Colin Hill, the little shit, was even mimicking me. I saw red and I flew at him, which wasn't the wisest move since he was bigger than me and quickly got the upper hand. Luckily Mr. Brooks broke it up before any damage was done. Then my worst nightmare happened. I was sent to the head teacher and his secretary called my mum to collect me. We got home and, strangely enough, that was the one time we ever talked about my trouble sleeping. She asked me why I was falling asleep in class, and I said I couldn't sleep at night. Again, I didn't tell her why. And all she said was, "You'll sleep when you die," which didn't exactly help. When I got older, I decided I couldn't take it anymore, and I was going to run away. Obviously, I thought about it before. One time, I actually worked up the courage to go through her handbag and take the house keys. But on a night, I was too terrified to leave my bedroom. You have no idea what that's like, to have your waking nightmare lying in the room next door, the person who's supposed to protect you. I remember being on edge the whole morning after, waiting for a chance to replace the keys before she took me to school. In the end, I hid them under a magazine on the living room table and hoped she wouldn't realise they'd moved. She didn't, but I was too scared to try that again. Plus, I knew I'd probably be found and brought back to her. So I lived with it. That was when I was about 9 or 10, I think. The second time was 4 months before my 15th birthday. I had planned to leave when I was 16, but I couldn't take it anymore. I decided I was going to ask a friend of mine if I could stay with him. At that point, I was old enough to realise that I shouldn't be living in that home and there were people who could help me. And I thought maybe he could. Maybe his parents could. So, on what I hoped would be my last night in that house, I lay in bed, consoling myself with the thought that I would never again have to endure those awful sounds. I hid a couple of t-shirts, some tracksuit bottoms and underpants in my school bag. The next day at school I'd tell my friend and ask for his help. It was all planned out. Then she started screaming. And I just could not wait any longer. I had to get out of there. I dressed myself, grabbed the bag and my torch, flashlight, and slowly turned my door handle and pushed open the door as gently as I could. I have never been so terrified in my life. It was bad enough in my bedroom, but in the hallway. My bedroom was at the end of the upstairs hallway, with hers on the left ahead of me, the spare bedroom after that, then the hallway turned right, past the bathroom, and opposite the bathroom were the stairs. Forcing myself out of that room required phenomenal effort on my part. After that, it was marginally easier because, well, I'd committed to leaving. There was no stopping now. But still, inching my way past her bedroom door, around the hallway and creeping as quietly as I could down the stairs. I replayed that journey in my nightmares for years after. To this day, I cannot understand how any human being could be capable of making those sounds. I reached the bottom of the stairs, crept into the living room, and raided her handbag for the keys. I also took some money. Not proud of that, but I thought I might need it. Then I grabbed some packets of crisps and bottles of Coke from the kitchen and went back out into the hallway and headed for the front door. And then it dawned on me that I couldn't hear her anymore. And I don't know why, but I suddenly had a flashback, I guess, to a recurring dream I'd had when I was very young, of my mum standing in my bedroom, screaming at me as I lay in bed. Her eyes were... Anyway, for some reason I found myself thinking of those dreams. Well, I think were dreams. And I had the strongest sensation that Mum was standing on the stairs, right behind me, staring at me, getting ready to... I panicked. I unlocked the door, God knows how, and I ran as far and as fast as I could. I won't say that after living with a mad woman through my whole childhood, that wandering the streets in the middle of the night didn't scare me, because that's not the case. I was scared. At one point, I saw a drunk guy lurching down the street towards me, and I shit myself. I dived over someone's garden wall and waited till he'd gone by to start moving again. He probably didn't notice. He was pissed out of his head. Eventually, I made it to the block of flats where my friend lived, and that's where my courage, such as it was, deserted me. I call this kid my friend, but that's not strictly accurate. Really, he was just the only one at school who wasn't a complete bastard to me. His parents didn't know me. If I buzzed their flat, they'd probably call the police right then and there, and I didn't want to deal with that. All I wanted was to find somewhere to have something approaching a proper night's sleep for the first time in my life. Then I spotted someone leaving the building, and I took my chance, shooting past them and inside. I still didn't look for my friend's flat. Instead, I spotted an alcove under the stairs going to the basement, and I huddled up in there. I still didn't sleep. I just lay there, wondering what I was going to do the next day. Then, sometime after dawn, a miracle happened. Exhaustion caught up with me, and I finally fell asleep, and I didn't wake up until the afternoon. I had my first decent sleep hiding under the stairs in the block of flats. When I woke up, I had a packet of crisps, a swig of Coke. Then I left the building, usually facilities in a nearby park, and became the single most tardy student in the history of Preston Upper School. I found my teacher, Mr. Good, as he was leaving the classroom long after my fellow students had gone home. Then I broke down and told him everything. And I'm pleased to say he lived up to his name. In the end, I went to live with my grandparents, my mum's mum and dad. Life wasn't exactly happiness and sunshine after that. My grandparents were very strict, religious types, but at least they didn't scare the hell out of me. I still had trouble sleeping, though. Eventually, I developed coping mechanisms, leaving my bedroom light on and having my radio on all night. I couldn't stand silence. I'd just keep waiting for the screams. Mum never visited. She and my grandparents didn't exactly get on, but I'm surprised by that. There were times when I missed her, oddly enough. I saw her in town once or twice, but I didn't speak to her. I don't know if she saw me. Mr. Good looked out for me, though. Actually, he became the only real friend I ever had. He was a good man. He was, though, and I miss him. He died a couple of years ago. So, eventually, I left school. Despite Mr. Good's help, I didn't have the best grades, so I ended up doing warehouse work. Started off with an agency, then got hired as permanent staff. Not the most exciting job in the world, but it enabled me to find my own place, to be free at last. You won't be surprised to hear that I work the night shift. I sleep during the day, with the curtains wide open and the radio on. Even now I have to have something on, I can't sleep if it's quiet. Things gradually got a little better for me. Working a night shift and sleeping odd hours isn't exactly a winning formula for an active social life, but I did make some friends. I even started seeing someone. Her name's Steph, and she works in the offices off the factory floor. Then, 4 months ago, it all started to fall apart. I heard through a co-worker of all things, who had absolutely no idea who the woman he was talking about was, that my mother committed suicide. He read about it on the local paper's website. She'd taken an overdose and wasn't found for 3 weeks. I hadn't seen her in 8 years and hadn't spoken to her since the night I left. I never attempted to contact her, I couldn't bring myself to, but I just assumed that one day we would meet again, that maybe she would have gotten help and we might even be able to form some kind of relationship. I hated her. She scared me to death, but she was still my mother. I still loved her. I lost it. I'm currently on sick leave, waiting for an appointment to see a counsellor. I hope they're good, because they're going to have their work cut out for them. I didn't go to the funeral, I couldn't. Steph left me. I stayed at her place the weekend after I was signed off from work. I slept there one night. I was woken by Steph about 5 in the morning. I'd never seen someone look so afraid. I asked her what was wrong, and she just told me to leave. I was groggy, so I asked her what she meant, and she told me to get out. She started crying and yelling at me to get out. I did as she asked, got my things and left. I didn't ask her why. I knew why. I expected it, to be honest. I'd hoped that maybe I was finally free. But I know my sleep patterns are fucked up. I'm fucked up. As much as I try not to think about it, to leave my childhood behind, I feared that one day I would inherit my mother's sickness. I would become my mother. Except that's not what happened. I know this because earlier this week I worked up the courage to text Steph and ask her what actually happened that night. 2 days ago, she texted back a single sentence. Get your camera and film yourself while you're sleeping. So yesterday I did exactly that. You're watching that footage right now. You can probably see I'm wearing headphones. I fell asleep listening to my iPod. I told you I can't sleep without some sound to drown out the silence, to cover up any other sounds. But there's one thing it can't cover up, because it's in my head now, and I know I'll never ever escape it, as long as I live. Possibly beyond that. Not the screams that tormented me for so many years of my young life, both as real sounds and horrible echoes of the past, but 3 simple words. I was wrong.